All right, this is part 2 of my personal year in review. So I did a lot of hiking, and this is probably going to be boring for anybody who isn't around here, so I will try to make it fast. When I first got here in April, I talked about on the first part that I did the Donut Falls trails, and that was the one where the snow was up over my head, literally, like it was probably 6-7 feet up in the air, maybe taller, just of packed snow, because there was so much snow up on the mountain. Apparently, 2022, 2023, that winter was a record year for Salt Lake City for precipitation and snow. So I arrived on an interesting year. The downside to that was that it took a long time for the snow to melt for me to get up in the mountains. One of my first hikes that I found was called the Dry Canyon Trail, and apparently it's like an underrated hike. It was absolutely gorgeous. I remember somebody saying, "Wow, I can't believe you found this so fast. Nobody really knows about this one, but it's amazing." You know, it's going to be boring if I go through each one of these. Let me just name them. Okay, so Donut Falls Trail, Dry Canyon Trail, 29th Street Trail in Ogden, Utah. Lambs Canyon by Park City, that one was kind of lame. I had to turn around because there was just so many fallen trees. Bells Canyon to Lower Falls out of Sandy, Utah. Salt Lake Overlook via Desolation Trail. That one was decent. It had a weird name since it was the Salt Lake Overlook. Basically, any trail that's near Salt Lake City is really an overlook, and this was not one of the better ones, so it was poorly named. Broads Fork Trail. This was an interesting one. I did this in the summertime, and the mountains were still snow-capped, even though it was June, late June. I got up to a point where there was this prairie up on the mountain with the beautiful view of the snow-capped mountains overhead. I started trying to climb further up from there, and it was just so many rocks, and it was so steep, and it was getting late, and it was kind of dangerous. And I thought, you know what? I can't go up any further safely. So, and I was solo hiking, so I just decided to turn around because if something happened to me up there and I was all alone, I'd be in big trouble once the sun set. See, it's kind of hard to explain how awesome these trips are. It's just so beautiful up there, though. It's hard to put into words. Ensign Peak, I've done that one several times. That's the one where it's like a half hour up. That's the one where I take my visitor friends to when they come to visit me. It's like a half hour up, and it really, honestly, just overlooks downtown Salt Lake City. And it's a very beautiful view, and it's a good way to get a feel for the city once you go up there. Another cool thing, which has nothing to do with hiking, is the state capitol's up there, up on top of a hill. Very cool looking. And then when you go up to Ensign Peak, it's right below you at that point. And the state capitol itself is really high up. And there's a little museum and gift shop across the road too. Oh, one other thing that's really cool about Salt Lake City and just this area in general is there are Mormon churches, which are pretty small. And they're like maybe if you ever look at a map of it, it's like a grid. You can look at a map of Mormon churches on the LDS website, and it's literally like a grid. Like they plan it very specifically so that there's a church in every little neighborhood, like even maybe several churches per neighborhood. And apparently it's planned that way because they want you to go to your local church, not to some other one. They want you to go to the one in your community. It's pretty wild. It's something I learned pretty quickly. So many LDS churches, so many Mormon churches. But the temples are very, very cool. They actually built one very close to where I live. And they light them up at night. And it's absolutely gorgeous. And you can kind of tell, like if you're up on a mountain, you can see the temples around the city. And you always know where you are. Like you always know what neighborhood you're looking at when you're up on the mountain and looking down because of the temples. And there's a lot less temples than there are churches. I don't know, maybe there's 3 inside the city. And then there's a few words in Utah that I've learned since I've been here. And like there's some things that fascinate me. One of them is dirty Diet Coke. I learned about that one most recently. Dirty Diet Coke is apparently because Mormons aren't supposed to drink caffeine or alcohol or anything like that. So what they do is somebody pointed out that, you know what, Coca-Cola has caffeine in it. So what are the ingredients for that? Let me look it up. Coconut syrup, crushed ice, lime, Diet Coke, and I don't know. It doesn't sound that great to me, but I think I might try it just because I live here before I leave. Something else, funeral potatoes, which is basically like cheesy potatoes or a potato casserole. They call them funeral potatoes here. Fry sauce is something out here that it's pretty simple. It's basically secret sauce like you would get at McDonald's, but it's half ketchup and half mayonnaise. And everybody eats their French fries in Utah with fry sauce. Another thing I learned about is the inversion. The inversion is when, I'm reading this from abc4.com out of Salt Lake City. To put it more simply, they say when there is no inversion, air near the ground is warmer and higher up is cooler. An inversion means that the warmer air is on top, while air near the ground is trapped, but is cooler up near the ground. Why does this happen? It says during the winter months, the snowy ground, in fact, cools the air, making it colder than the warmer air above under normal conditions, and air is warmer near the ground, colder. I don't know. This is why inversions often occur after a snowstorm, mostly common on clear, low-wind, sunny days where the calm, clear skies warm up the upper atmosphere. So basically, cold air trapped low because of the cities surrounded by mountains on all sides. And the dust and the pollution and all that stuff just basically creates smog in the valley, and it's really gross. Okay, so that's another term. I don't know, that was probably way too long. It was not a very good description. And the last thing I learned was the word the benches. I was at work one day and a woman I work with told me, she goes, I saw a mountain lion the other day. I said, where did you see it? She said, the benches. And so we were talking with somebody else the next day, and her and I and some other person, I'm like, hey, Tiffany saw a mountain lion on a park bench the other day. and she goes, no. She goes, the benches. I'm like, what's the benches? She goes, it's the area in between the city and the mountains. And she says it's like stacked like benches would be, which I think is, I kind of get the concept, but I think it's probably more like stair steps up into the mountains. And it's pretty cool. This is where all the millionaires have their homes. And basically one road will be on the side of the mountain and then another one will be a little bit higher. And it just it's almost like switchbacks almost. Switchbacks. If you've ever done a hike and they have switchbacks, that's kind of more like what it's like. But the roads are lined with $2 million homes with incredible views. So the benches is the other word. Oh, a lot of these hikes are just kind of in those benches areas. Basically, if you go on any hike that overlooks the city, they're all gorgeous, especially if you go at like sunset. And then the city lights up and then it gets really gorgeous. But it's like even best when it's both. Like the sun's still setting and the city's lit up. The living room trail, that's another one I did. I don't know why it's called that. It's a Mount Wire. Yeah, that was another one of those ones that had amazing views at night. And then I went with a hiking group for the fireworks in North Salt Lake. And it was another one of those that just had amazing views and overlooked a country club with a golf course. And it was on the 4th of July, or actually it was on the 3rd of July. And got to watch fireworks from above. It was incredible. And it was such a beautiful night too. I just stayed up there after they left and I just kind of made my way back down slowly. I just kind of stopped midway on the trail and just sat there and overlooked the neighborhood below me. And, it was a kind of a party night since it was the 3rd of July and all the people down below were just kind of yelling and talking to each other and you could just hear the conversations. And it was just such a cool experience. And people were still shooting off fireworks from time to time. And I don't know, it was just fun. The Ogden Overlook Trail, Granier Peak East Trail. I think that was one of my first peaks that I did once it started to get a little warmer. Oh, and there was the big one that I did, the one that I loved, Mount Olympus, which is the mountain that kind of overlooks the city. It's very unique looking. Kind of looks like I've been thinking about it recently. It kind of looks like an alligator's head when an alligator's kind of like half in the water and half out. And only the top of his head is poking out. But yeah, this one was really difficult, really challenging. And since it overlooks the city, it's always calling my name. And I'm really excited that I did that one. That was the one I was talking about in the first episode where a guy was talking about how he heard 4 different rattlesnakes, although I never saw or heard any of them, and I'm glad. I don't really want to see or hear a rattlesnake. And then I did Grand Tetons. Let's see, what did I do the first day? Did Taggart Lake Trailhead. And that was kind of like an easy one that you could take your kids on or whatever. It started raining and lightning while I was out there, but the views were incredible. Even though it was an easy hike, there was a little lake and just like the Teton Mountains up above, overlooking the lake. And I didn't have a lot of time that day, so I did that right before sunset. And the second day was the one where I literally just kind of climbed up to the main mountain, the Grand Teton Mountain, towards it. Like I said in the first part, I got basically halfway up. Very difficult. I saw an elk. I saw some glaciers. I'd never seen glaciers before. They weren't as big as I thought they'd be. It was really hard to tell the difference between a patch of snow and a glacier, honestly. Grand Tetons is where Ansel Adams took a lot of his photography, like a lot of his famous portraits are from Grand Teton National Park. Before everybody had a smartphone. And and I actually went to the spot where Ansel Adams took his famous photo. And there were just so many tourists, and it was so annoying. Like people on their smartphones, like, "Hey, look where I am!" at the full volume, and it was just like, "Get me out of here! This is awful." So I couldn't get away from that spot fast enough, even though I grew up a huge Ansel Adams fan as a kid, and like it was one of those bucket list items that I forgot I had to go see, like a awesome spot where one of my childhood heroes took a famous, amazing photograph. And it was cool that I did that, and I didn't even really set out to do it. Oh, and then at the end, as I was leaving, and I was just tired because I'd done the big hike that same day, and I just didn't have any energy left, and I had to travel to get to my campground, and so I just was ready to leave. I saw a group of photographers, and they had a guide, and the guide was like, "Hey, let's go down to this little patch down here." And I have a feeling that was where the Ansel Adams photo was actually taken from, because it didn't look exactly the same as in the photo, the view that we had from the street. And apparently there's like two things that you could do in Grand Teton. You can either go into the public road, which doesn't cost any money, and that's where all the annoying touristy people were, or you could pay to actually get in the park. And I found out that a year pass to go to national parks is only like $81, and it costs like $70. I don't quote me on that. It was stupid not to buy the year pass for all the national parks when you could pay a ridiculous amount just to go to one park, if that makes sense. Like, I think it was only like $10 or $20 more to get all the national parks than it was just to do the one. And that makes a lot of sense for me because I live in an area where there's a lot of national parks, and I plan to go to a lot of them, especially in 2024. But the people on the mountains who were actually doing physical work, they were much, much cooler. They weren't the get out of your car and yell at the top of your lungs on smartphones to your, I don't know, to whatever. I don't even know what those are called, where the video phone stuff, where you talk to people halfway across the world. "Hey, look, Mom, I'm in Teton." You know what? I always hear people complaining about how loud Americans are when they travel overseas. Why are Americans so loud? I'm not a loud person, which annoys me that we have that reputation, and I'm not loud at all. Let me tell you, maybe it's just that touristy people are loud and obnoxious, because when I was in Grand Teton and that free part where all the touristy people went, it was not the Americans who were loud. Oh, and there was this incredible view from just over top the highway that went into Jackson Hole. There was horrible traffic trying to get in and out of there, but Jackson Hole's the town. It just seems like a lot of national parks have this little town that people go to before they go into the national park itself. And there was just this amazing view. There happened to be fog over Jackson Hole that day. And as I went down into the valley from Idaho, I've seen very few more amazing views than that one that day. Absolutely incredible. Grand Teton was a little smaller than I thought it would be, the national park. The mountain itself was a little bigger than I thought it would be as I was trying to climb it. Oh, and on my way back, I went to Idaho Falls, the town. Actually, I remembered it when I went there. It's like, oh, I'd like to live in this town one day. I remember that from like a long time ago. I happened to be jumping on the internet and like searching for places that look kind of cool to live in Idaho Falls. And I didn't remember it until I got there. It's like, oh, I remember thinking one day I might live here. It was kind of cool. Actually, just the other day, I met a guy who is from Idaho Falls, and he says there's just not much to do there. So he moved to Salt Lake City. Stewart Cascades near Provo, Utah. That one was really cool. It wasn't really physically difficult. I mean, it was, relatively to some of the harder ones around here. That one was just kind of one where parents could take their kids, and there were a lot of kids there that day. And the waterfall was incredible. Some of the kids were climbing up on the waterfall, and I thought, oh, those are trusting parents. Lake Blanche, that one was really incredible. Go up to the top of not to the top of the mountain, but to this, like, just kind of like I was talking about with one of the other trails. You get to a certain point, and there just seems to be this meadow right before you go up into the higher peaks. And that's basically where we stopped. I went there with a couple of different people, a woman from Edmonton and a guy from Ukraine, which was an interesting mix. And the woman from Edmonton was actually, I think, a second generation Chinese woman. She was really cool, really talkative. And then she moved away. So I haven't seen her since. But man, you get up to there to this lake and it's just gorgeous. Like it looks bigger in pictures than it is in real life, but you get up there and there's just this incredible view with the mountains in the distance and the lake in the foreground. And there were actually 3 lakes up there. And it looked like in the late 1800s, early 1900s, I can't remember exactly, we looked it up. But the lake had actually been dammed at one point by early settlers. And it's weird to think that somebody would be able to take all the all the bricks up there to make a dam, even now today, but certainly back then. Brighton Lakes Loop, which is up in the ski resorts, that was really pretty. Nice lakes, nice views. Once you start in the ski resorts, you're already at a high elevation when you start, so you may be really, really high up in the air, but also at the same time, you don't have to do that much elevation to get really high because you already started at a high point. One of the things that I've learned since I've been here, and I guess I knew this before I got here, but it could be 80 degrees in the valley and you get up to the ski resorts and it's like 50. Or it could be 50 down in the valley and it could be like below freezing up in the ski resorts or the higher elevation hikes in general. Ferguson Canyon, that was another one that overlooked the city. This was in the height of my discipline and fasting where I was just doing 3 hikes every weekend. And I did really well for about a month and a half, like extremely well. Kiev Peak, this was one of my favorites. I've done it actually twice since I've lived here. One was in the summertime and another was in the winter. Squaw Peak was what it was originally called. Apparently that's politically incorrect, so they had to change the name to something more confusing. Milan's Peak Trailhead in Ogden, Utah. This one was cool because there's a Air Force base in Ogden, and it was fun to watch the military jets fly around in circles. Kind of reminded me of being back in Florida. Circle Law Peak and Cottonwood Canyon. Gobbler's Knob, which has a great name. That was a good one. That was another one of those high peaks. And then Deseret Peak, which was actually like 2 hours west of the city. It was almost out towards Nevada. I went with a hiking group on that one. And man, one of the girls was so gorgeous. I've thought about that girl ever since. Sunset Peak via Brighton Lakes. This was in early September and it got really cold. This was another one that was up in that Brighton ski resort. It got so cold. It was like in the low 40s, I think, by the time I got to the top. And man, it was windy and I wish I had wore gloves. Moss Ledge Waterfall. This one was kind of miserable. There was no actual trail. It was only like 0.4 miles, but it was brutal trying to get up it. I don't know if it was miserable, but there was no trail. And I had already gone on another trail earlier that day. Bear Trap Fork Trail. Yes, this one was really pretty. Gloria Falls, and apparently I did this twice. Oh, that's right. This was right before it started snowing. This one was pretty cool. I went once by myself. A lot of views, a lot of cool views. The first time I went was when the leaves were changing, and just a couple of weeks later I saw a group doing the exact same thing, and I'm like, I need to meet people. So I ended up going a couple of weeks later, and there was a lot of snow on the ground. It was very icy. I had to buy, one of the first things I did when I moved here was to buy, not yak tracks, but the spikes. Some people call them crampons, which is a horrible name. Spikes, yak tracks. Oh, I actually tried to buy some hiking poles right before I went to Grand Teton, and I was so mad. The poles that I bought were expensive, but they were total junk. I wish I remembered what they were called, because I'd say it out loud, because, I should have tried using them before I went to like a big trip like Grand Teton, but I didn't. And then I realized while I was on this incredibly difficult hike that my poles were junk. And one time they kept slipping on me. Like I'd use them to prop myself up as I was climbing up or down. And one time it just kind of like fell apart on me, and, without even realizing I hit the ground, and it's like I injured myself while I was on the mountain. So that was my first attempt at buying hiking poles. But then again, I'm fast forwarding to 2024. I just bought some better ones. I went up with some people I know recently, and they had some poles that I really liked. So I just got what they had. I got green instead of orange. They had orange ones. I got green ones, so that if we go hiking together again, we won't get them confused. Yeah, but the second time I went up to Gloria Falls, there was a bunch of people, and I had a lot of good conversations about podcasts and basically about so many things. It's fun to go up with other people. As much as I like hiking solo, because then I can listen to podcasts and I can take my time, and if I want to stop and take a lunch or journal, that's fun to do in the summertime. A lot of times sometimes I'll take up some booze. I'll take some booze and I'll take a journal, and I'll just stop in a pretty place, and I'll just hang out for an hour on the side of a mountain, just looking at the incredible views. Hopefully this isn't too boring, me just naming mountains. Rattlesnake Gulch, which I was terrified about the name because, again, I never want to see a rattlesnake, but I didn't see a single rattlesnake on this one, and it actually turned out to be a relatively easy hike. I did this in October, and the leaves were changing, and it was just absolutely beautiful. Three Springs Trail in Provo. Oh, I saw what I believe was a dead elk skeleton. All that was left was the skull and the bones. This is another one of those where I came down and the city was lit up at sunset. Bell's Canyon to Lower Falls, which I've already done once, but I did this one in the snow the second time. Thanes Canyon Trail, and I did this one in the snow. Yeah, it was okay. Man, sometimes when I'm hiking up a mountain, I think, why am I doing this to myself? It's incredible exercise, but it's just like, it's like climbing stairs for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, however long it takes. Oh, wait. Thanes Canyon was in 2024, so scratch that one. So I guess that was the majority of my hikes. Sorry if that was boring. It'll be, again, these personal year in reviews are mostly for me. So I'll come back and listen to them one day and appreciate it, even if you guys don't. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, again, I think I talked about this in the first part. There was so much cool stuff to see close to the city that I really didn't leave the city as much as I thought I was going to. And that's something when people come from other towns, the thing that they're blown away by is how close the mountains are to the city. I don't know, like in other cities, they say you have to kind of drive a little further to get, I think the woman from Edmonton said, yeah, there's mountains, but you got to drive a couple hours to get there. And that's kind of the theme that I've noticed when I talk to people who moved here from other mountain cities is that, yeah, their city has mountains, but the Wasatch and outside of Salt Lake City they're right there. Like literally, some of the hikes start in the suburbs, and one of the hikes starts downtown. The Living Room Trail, that one actually starts at the University of Utah. So anyways, that's the hiking portion. Let me think if there's anything else that was memorable about hiking. The altitude never really got to me except for one time, mostly when I'm driving up to Park City. I think it affected me twice, if I remember correctly. And one was early on when I drove up to Park City and got up there, and I was trying to go on a hike. I went up and I saw the ski jump from the Olympics. It was so cool. The Olympic Park Resort is up there where the 2002 Winter Olympics, that's where they were held, up in Park City. I drove around Park City once, and I meant to go back when it was colder. I went there in the summertime. And I meant to go back when there was snow on the ground, and I never did. It's still not too late, I suppose. But you can actually learn to bobsled, and you can go down, just like people did at the Olympics, as long as you have a couple $100 and a lot of guts. I loved the Winter Olympics when I was a kid. So again, that's like another bucket list that I forgot that I had, is to be around the Winter Olympic city. All right, let's talk about sports a little bit. Super Bowl LVII, what does that mean? 2023 Super Bowl for the 2022 season. It's hard to do football in a year in review because the playoffs are at the beginning of the year and the regular season's at the end of the year. So it kind of is divided up into two. So I'm just going to talk about both of them. Kansas City Chiefs beat the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35 in the Super Bowl. The referees really helped to get Kansas City to a place where they can win. I was really upset about this one. It's like I just felt this feeling of disgust that I watched an entire football season just for it to end in so many referees calls. And then the Chiefs ended up winning. Oh, that's right. I lived in Jacksonville, and Jacksonville Jaguars eked out a playoff berth and eventually lost to the Chiefs. And then the Chiefs played the Bengals, and that was another one where the referees kind of helped Kansas City out a bit. It was Jalen Hurts, quarterback for the Eagles, versus Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and the Chiefs. Oh, that was the one where Jason Kelce played against Travis Kelce. Jason Kelce for the Eagles and Travis Kelce for the Chiefs. So let's go to the next season. This was the season where Aaron Rodgers got injured 4 plays into the season, like a season-ending injury 4 plays into the season. Rodgers, who had moved from Green Bay, Green Bay was fed up with Rodgers, so Rodgers went on his ayahuasca retreat, and when he came out, he decided to become a New York Jet and got injured 4 plays into the season and never came back. Well, I mean, he'll come back next year, but this was the year where Tom Brady decided to retire in between seasons. It was wild to see Tom Brady go. One of the all-time greats. Some would say he's the all-time great. Georgia won the national championship in early 2023. They destroyed TCU and won their second championship in a row by going through Ohio State. And Ohio State was up 14 points in the semifinals. And I went back and I was forced to watch that game again when I was in Columbus visiting. I stopped in Columbus and was hanging out with a friend at a sports bar, and that game was on the second time, and I'm watching it a second time, and Ohio State's up by 14 points in the fourth quarter, and it just looked like Ohio State was going to the national championship, and then I don't know what the heck happened, man. And then Ohio State had a chance to kick a field goal to win the game, and the kicker, it was kind of a long field goal, but it was nowhere close. One of the most disgusting moments as an Ohio State fan in Ohio State history. TCU beat Michigan in the other one. I mean, this had a chance to be an Ohio State-Michigan national championship. And TCU took down Michigan. So it ended up being a Georgia versus TCU championship, and it was not a good game. This was the year when the NCAA, as we know it, changed. USC and UCLA decided to go to the Big Ten. I think that was last year. And then Oregon and Washington decided to go too. So that was basically all the big schools from the Pac-12, the Pac-10, the Pac-8, whatever they were over the years. And now I think it still exists, but it's going to be like one of those little scrub conferences that nobody thinks about. And there's so much tradition that just died, and it was coming anyway. Too much has changed. Name, image, likeness, where the players are allowed to, Ohio State lost their Big Ten title one year because Terrell Pryor got paid for signing paraphernalia. And that was considered so evil at the time that they stripped away all of Ohio State's wins that year, including the Big Ten championship. And now it's just it's legal. Everybody can do it, and suddenly, college football is semi-professional, and the highest bidder gets the best players. It's kind of weird. I don't think it's going to last like this for very long. I think they're going to find other ways to do it because there's real problems with it. UConn beat San Diego State 76-59 in the Final Four national championship. There's a lot of underdogs at the top of this one. UConn in the semifinals, UConn beat Miami of Florida, and San Diego State beat Florida Atlantic. Man, the Final Four, the The brackets, they're not as fun as they used to be. You know, it used to be like this really big deal when a small team would upset a big team. But the way things are now, again, with the name, image, likeness, and just even before that, people not staying in college very long, going straight to the NBA after they serve their term, serve their sentence in the college. You know, it's just not as big of a deal when a small school upsets a big school these days. I've just lost my love for basketball. Like, I tried to watch an Ohio State versus Michigan basketball game this year, and it didn't help that both of those teams are really bad, but I couldn't even make it through my own team's basketball game. I just don't care anymore. I don't know what happened to basketball. I used to love it. It used to be my sport. I used to play basketball. I just don't care about it at all anymore. Denver and Nikola Jokic. Jokic? I don't know how to pronounce his name. The Denver Nuggets beat the Miami Heat 4-1. The Vegas Golden Knights, who are like 5 years old at this point, maybe 6, beat the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup. The Seattle Kraken took down the Colorado Avalanche, the defending champions, and made it pretty far. I mean, the league's kind of changing, you know. Ryan Blaney won NASCAR. The Texas Rangers won their first ever World Series for the first time in 52 years, and they beat the Arizona Diamondbacks in the World Series. American League was an all-Texas championship between Houston and Texas, and that was probably a lot more exciting to people than the actual World Series was. Your Columbus Crew won the Major League Soccer championship. Yay, Ohio. At least we're winning at something. Even if it is the fifth sport. Columbus won in 2008, 2020, and again in 2023. So that's, I think, their third time that they've won. Yeah, the Crew has appeared in 4 championships and won 3 of them. So let me look at the numbers here. The LA Galaxy has won 5. DC United has won 4. Columbus is in third place with 3. Houston, Seattle, Kansas City, and San Jose follow up with 2. And Real Salt Lake has 1. And I say that because I live in Salt Lake and I was just curious and I wanted to see. So yay, go Columbus. I already talked about this in the World Year in Review, but Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift started dating. Michigan's coach Harbaugh got in all sorts of trouble for like some spying controversy. And spoiler alert, Michigan ended up winning the national championship anyway in 2024. Man, time is flying. It's driving me insane. I talked about how I journal all the time. It's never like, wow, I can't believe this month lasted so long. It's always feels like it's over as soon as I start. Oh, the Barbie movie came out in 2023, and so did Oppenheimer. Killers of the Flower Moon, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. I don't know, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of popular ones, but the ones at the top were really well respected. I ended up watching Oppenheimer just a few weeks ago, and I just did not feel the love for it that everybody else does. I don't know, I don't want to spoil it, but there were things in the movie that just seem very historically inaccurate. And one of my pet peeves is when they do history movies and they change the script to be something different than it actually was. And that's how this movie was. And it just kind of annoyed me. And it was very long and it was drudgery getting through it. I haven't watched Barbie, the actual movie, but I have watched the version of it where they have like the director talk over it because it was free to watch where I live. And a lot of people hated that movie. A lot of conservatives talked out about how it was raising young women, little girls, to think poorly about men. And I agree with a lot of the things that conservatives say, but come on, man. It's a kid's movie. It was just silly. Everything about it was silly. Everybody looked dumb. It wasn't just the men that looked dumb. It was the women looked dumb too. It was a movie about Barbie dolls coming to life. How seriously are we going to take this, you know? Apparently, number 100 of the best songs from 2023 was Ryan Gosling's I'm Just Kidding from the Barbie movie. The number 1 song, according to Billboard, was Zaz, Kill Bill. How's that one go? I might kill my ex, not the best idea. Kind of a messed up song. Never actually listened to the lyrics before. I might kill my ex, I still love him so. Rather be in jail than alone. I don't know how that was the number one song of the year. Billie Eilish, another song from the Barbie movie, What Was I Made For? That one I actually didn't hate, but I kind of like Billie Eilish's music. Bizarrap and Shakira. Miley Cyrus, Flowers. I feel like that was more of a 2022 song, but I could be wrong. Again, everything that happened in Florida feels like it was last year, and everything that happened in Utah feels like it was this year. I can buy my own flowers, write my name in the sand. That one was enjoyable, and I don't really like Miley Cyrus. Doja Cat, Paint the Town Red. Boy Genius, Not Strong Enough. I've never heard that one. Troye Sivan, Rush. Pink Pantheress and Ice Spice. Boy's a Liar. Okay, Olivia Rodrigo. She had a lot of good ones this year. Get Him Back was the one that the Billboard lists here. Rima and Selena Gomez. This one was like, dun 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 dun. Very repetitive, but I don't know. I guess I get why people might like it. Bad Bunny, Monaco. I have not heard that one. Sabrina Carpenter, Nonsense. Ice Spice and Nicki Minaj. Jelly Roll, Need a Favor. Dua Lipa, Dance the Night. I like that one. Dance the night away. Yeah. Let's see if there's any other ones that I kind of like. Olivia Rodrigo had like 3 that I really liked. What was the one that kind of blew me away? Vampire. That one was really cool. And I know there was a third one too, but I can't remember what it is. 21 Savage is a big deal, I guess. Taylor Swift. Is It Over Now? Lainey Wilson's Heart Like a Truck. I feel like that was 2022, maybe. I could be wrong. Again, I get years confused since they're popular in two different years sometimes. That was a good song, though. Morgan Wallen, Last Night. Again, I think that was a holdover from the previous year. Fast Car by Luke Combs, the remake of the old classic by Tracy Chapman. The original was incredible. It really didn't need to be remade. And something that I had never thought of before, just because I was familiar with the original. When I was on that hike up to Deseret Peak, I was talking with a woman who said, she really loved country music. And she goes, I could tell that Fast Car was written by a woman, and I never really understood why until I heard the original. And I said, oh, you knew by listening to the lyrics that it was a woman supposed to be in the song? And she's like, yeah. So I went back and I listened to it, and it's ridiculously obvious. And I didn't notice because I was just so familiar with the original. But Luke Combs is literally singing about, things that only a woman would say in that song. It's like, change up the lyrics if you're going to do that, I don't know if he intended that to be a huge hit, or if he just likes playing it. All right, I think that's it, though. That's enough for the music. So I guess I'll just wrap it up by, wasn't the greatest year ever, although it was very adventurous. I lived in 2 different states. I lived in Florida and I lived in Utah. Got laid off. Everything's different in good ways and bad. It's fun, man. I think one thing I'm starting to notice is that the traveling's wearing on me. As awesome as it is to travel around like this, it's, I talked about the bad roommate situation. My plan, I don't know if it's going to be in 2024 or 2025, but my plan is to move back to Ohio, where homes are more affordable. And I'm going to just buy a house. And autonomy is something I'm struggling with at this point. I'm too old to be somebody else's tenant. I may have roommates in the future, but they're going to be people I decide to live with, not the other way around. And if I don't like them, I'll kick them out. But one thing I want to do is, build a recording studio when I buy a house. And, then I'll just have my podcast set up, my recording equipment set up anytime. And I can just sit down and record and not have to worry about other people. And honestly, I'll just make a room. The desire for autonomy is getting stronger and stronger, especially when I get bad roommates. So I went the entire pandemic without ever getting sick. And then I got sick once in 2023 in November for a long time. And I got sick again. And it's just like, it ruins entire months of my life. So it's hard to live a great life when a 12th of it has been ruined by sickness. I don't know. There's a lot of things that can really bring you down, but I'm trying my best to live a more interesting life. And I think one thing I struggled with this year was to just leave the house. Because, that job I talked about in the first part, it's so physically exhausting. And when the weekend comes around, I was just talking with a guy the other day. He said, I used to work 4-hour days, 12 hours a day. And he said, I thought when the weekend rolled around, I was just going to have these amazing 3-day weekends. And I just spend the entire weekend recovering. And that's kind of how I feel. I'm working 10 or 11-hour days. And when the weekend rolls around, it's just so easy to lay in bed. For a little while there during the summertime, I was doing 3 hikes every weekend, like strenuous hikes every weekend. And I'll probably end up doing that again this summer before I leave. But it's hard when the weather's crummy. That's why I miss Florida so much. When the weather's crummy here, it's hard to get out of bed, out of the house on these 3-day weekends and go up into the mountains where it's even colder and there's avalanches and there's snow up there, and maybe there's not down here, or maybe there is snow down here and there's more snow up there. And it's hard. It's hard to get motivated. There are so many national parks and beautiful state parks around here in 2024. I absolutely have to do better. Getting laid off, as much as I didn't care about it, it still threw me for a big loop, because there was this time. So they announced that we were being laid off in February 1st, and then they didn't actually let us go. They made us stay for 2 more months after that. So it was like there was this whole 2-month period where I just didn't care about anything, at least work-wise. Like I just went through the motions after that during those 2 months. And it just felt like life was on hold for 2 months. So sickness 1 month, being on hold for 2 months, moving 1 month, and just having to restart life over and over again, and then dealing with crappy roommates. I think that's why I didn't love 2023. There were just like too many little struggles. Oh, one other thing I guess I should remember about this year is that at work, there's this little neighborhood cat that I like. Sometimes he lets me play with him and pet him, and other times not so much. He's like really adventurous and sometimes he's in the mood to play, and sometimes he's just like too busy being on an adventure. And looks like kind of like a tiger striped cat, not a normal house cat that you might see. But anyways, there was one time where I was outside of his apartment and I was talking to him, and I'd say something to him and he'd go, meow. And there was this bird up in the tree, and he was like looking up at the bird, and I pet him for a little bit, and he was just obsessed with this bird. I'm like, are you going to go get it? He goes, meow. Then I walked away for a few minutes, and I came back, and there he was up in the tree chasing after the bird. I didn't get it because I think I scared the bird away when I came back out, but I pretty much feel like we had a conversation there and I convinced him to go up and get the bird. Ornery little kitty. Love him. I like him more than he likes me. Unrequited love. All right. Well, I've been talking for like 3 hours at this point. I don't know what it'll be like after I edit it. Probably more like an hour and a half, I suppose. But this might be the long, I didn't think I had anything to talk about, but then I went ahead and I talked for 3 hours. So, all right. I'll probably divide this into 2 parts. All right. Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to the show. The Great Big Intergalactic can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Apple iTunes, and anywhere else that podcasts can be heard. If social media is your thing, you can follow the program on Facebook or Twitter. If you enjoy the show, upvote, share, like, and subscribe. Whenever and wherever those things can be done. If you'd like to send feedback, the easiest way to do that is to email the show at tgbiuniverse@gmail.com. TGBI as in the Great Big Intergalactic. Or you can leave a voicemail at 216-200-7940. Contributions could include written feedback, audio submissions, voicemails, or potentially even live guests. It was great having you today, and see you next time.